So I went through something this year. You might have noticed that since July, my video posting has been erratic, or at least more erratic than usual. Well, at the start of July this year, my grandpa in France suffered a stroke. And after about a month in hospital where he was in and out of critical condition, he passed away in early August. And it was really fucking hard. And I really struggled with the idea of doing a video about this, but at the end of the day, this channel is my name, JulienCFDurand. It's not Julien's Reviews or Video Essayist 24601. It's my name. I am not a critic, and I've never made myself out to be one. I'm just a guy who really loves stories and loves sharing that love right here on YouTube. That is all this channel is ever meant to be. And so this is a story that I want to share because it matters to me. It matters far more than the latest Star Wars or Avengers movie, and if I can make hours worth of content about those, I can definitely share this story. So this is that story. It's about a grandma, a grandpa, and a fat little nerdy boy who became this internet geek guy. Let's start with that boy. My childhood was not a super happy one. I was really fortunate in a lot of ways. I never had to worry about whether I would eat, and my parents never struggled to send us to school or find us a place to live. But I was also part of a family that moved so much that by the time I was 8, we'd moved to 4 different countries. I didn't have any stability as a child, and because of that, I never really had social skills. And so wherever we moved, I was bullied, and because I was bullied, I ate, and then I got bullied for that too. When I was younger, my parents and I had a really hard relationship that strained and almost broke, and it only really repaired a few years ago. But in all of that chaos and in all of that tough stuff, I had one bright thing in my life. It was a safe haven where I was almost always totally happy. And that place was spending summers in Normandy in France at my grandparents' house. It was a place where my siblings and I were loved totally unconditionally. And it was very far away, very far from the schools and the parents who made me so unhappy. And in that sanctuary built between the rolling green hills of Normandy, I found a place where I could truly be myself. With my grandparents, the qualities that made me unique and different were not only accepted, but encouraged. I loved movies, so my grandma, Elisabeth, would spend the whole year recording a bunch of them on VHS tapes from TV, and she'd have them ready in a pile for us when we got there. I loved nature and travel, so with my grandpa, Claude, we would go on fishing trips that I was never really great at, but we would also sit and watch nature documentaries. There was one that's called Thalassa, that's a TV show in France that is still going. So much of who I am today was built over there, back then, in my summers with them. We played board games all the time, and even now I still can't get enough of them, to the point where I'm making videos about Dungeons and Dragons that get no views. I read through the whole collection of Asterix and Tintin, and to this day I'm still enamored with reading and history. I used to play soccer in their backyard and watch the World Cup there with them, and to this day I still love the sport, and especially Les Bleus. And of course, they're the reason I identify so much with my French background, even though I only ever lived in the country for 3 years. I am who I am because of them, and I am so lucky to have had them. And so, with many, many years of foundation, my family and I moved to Australia in 2008, and I finished high school here, and I finally found a group of friends that liked me. And we all grew up into adults together, and in 2014 we went on this big world trip gap year. But halfway through that trip, my grandma passed away. And so I went back to Normandy in much worse conditions than I'd ever gone there before. There I found my grandpa, a man who hadn't been without his wife for 60 years, all alone. And then I was there, so he wasn't alone, but it felt like I couldn't really make it any better. I was also grieving, and so we were just two sad, lonely people in a sad, lonely house. But it turns out, just by being there together, we did make it better for each other. It took time, and it always takes time. But over the next few months, we finally started to smile again, and especially when we realized that we both had a really good time just being big ol' idiots together. Whether we were mocking pompous politicians on the news or making racing car noises as we drove his tiny little car through the streets of the city, or eating ice cream at the entirely wrong time of day, breakfast. It turned out we were both adults who had never really grown up. And it was in sharing that, in grieving and growing together, that he became so much more than just my grandpa. He became one of my best friends. I eventually had to go back to Australia, but when I did, we still called each other and talked every week. I often hear other people complain about having to talk to their grandparents, as if having to talk to them on the phone for 5 minutes is the biggest burden a person can bear. But I can tell you that on the weeks where we didn't manage to get a hold of each other, we fucking missed each other. And now there are no more phone calls, and I miss him all the time. Where there was a friendship, now there's just me. And it took months to get over that feeling that someone who was so important to me, that I loved so much, is gone with nothing left. But that's just it. It was only when I was grieving, when I kept looking back on the person he was and the relationship that we had, that I realized how foundational he and my grandma were in making me the person I am today. And as time went by, I understood that that's what people mean when they say that the people that love you never really leave you. Whether or not you're religious or believe in an afterlife, they do stay here with you on Earth in the most practical of ways. The people who love you are the ones who shape you. They're the ones who bring out the best in you, the ones who show you who you truly are. And the most amazing thing is that you also do that for them. And so they do never leave you, even after they're gone, because you are you because of them. Their love and the positive way they impacted us reaches out from beyond the void, and we can appreciate who they were all the more. We're all the more thankful to have had them, and all the happier to know that we got to spend some of our short time on this earth with them. So in that way, because of the love that shaped me, and in the way I would have shaped them, Claude and Elisabeth will always be with me. There's something I wrote on the train back from my grandpa's funeral in France earlier this year. And I wanted to share it at the time, but I decided not to because I'd barely started grieving privately, much less making a public statement about how I felt. But now I've had time, and over the past few months I've learned that sharing our struggles and being vulnerable together is what brings us closer as people. It's how we can form these deep connections as people and it builds bridges between us in a way that nothing else really can. And sure, every once in a while, some asshole will roll along and try and take advantage of that vulnerability, but fuck that person. They will die alone, and you will still have every other amazing, positive connection you made along the way. So in the name of being vulnerable and of positive connections, here goes. We buried my grandfather yesterday. It's not the first time I've lost family, but it is the first time I've been at the funeral. And though this painful moment has revealed just how lucky I am to have so many caring, supportive people in my life, there's still a part of me that's now missing, no longer here with us. But there are 3 things the ceremony yesterday really reinforced for me. The first is to express your love for those you care about. So many people yesterday shared stories of my grandpa's constant kindness and affection for those he loved. Whether as small as hosting meals to bring friends together, or as big as helping a few of them buy their frickin' houses. He didn't care for them in silence. He always showed that he cared. The second is to be proud of who you are, of the things that make you uniquely you. This is one I struggle with all the time. But hearing others tell me how he spoke about me, how proud he was that I'd written a book, and then I called him all the time from Sydney. In that moment, it's hard to take the voices of self-hate seriously. So love who you are, and love yourself proudly. Lastly, do that thing you want to do. The job you want, the place you've always wanted to visit, your long-standing crush, go for it. Yesterday could have been a lesson in how lucky my grandpa was in life, but the truth is he was always on the lookout for new opportunities or adventures. And when they came along, he took a leap. And it didn't always pan out, but no one remembers those at your funeral. They remember the leaps that made it. Writing all this feels very weird to me, but it's also cathartic in a way. My grandpa was by no means a perfect person, but he was a very special one with a lot to learn from. And so I hope I do. Thanks for listening, guys. I love you all.